What would you do in this 8-ball situation with ball in hand, shooting stripes or solids? Options were discussed recently on AZ Billiards, and in this video I demonstrate those and other alternatives. But before I do, study the layout some and try to figure out what you would do in this situation. If you are shooting stripes, you are in a bad situation, but there are several reasonable options. You could try to move the 3 and 4 a little to try to open up a look at the 11. This would be an intentional foul, and your opponent would have ball in hand, but you might get lucky and get a look at the 11 later. But if you move the balls too much, your opponent can easily win the game. Here, I left the 3 bad, but I gave my opponent options with the 4. Again, I just lost the game. Here, I opened up the 11, but my opponent can play an easy safety. If he had locked me up, frozen to the backside of the 4, I'd really be in trouble. If the 3 were farther out, it would be easier to control the positions of the 3 and 4. Here, I left the 11 accessible on both sides, but my opponent has an easy out. I could instead try to tie up the 3 and 4 more, but my opponent can still play an easy safety. If the cue ball were more behind the 3, I'd be in big trouble. And even here, I don't have a direct one-rail kick without needing to use side spin, which is difficult to control. Another option for stripes is to tie the 8-ball up with the solids, but my opponent can just pocket the 11 while playing safe. I could then try to pocket the 3 and leave the 4 tied up with the 8, but I would still be the underdog. My opponent could also pocket the 11 and 3 and really tie me up. Regardless of what I do, my opponent could just bank the 4 at any time and get out. I could try to tie the 8 up with the 3 instead, but my opponent can then easily pocket the 11 and still have the upper hand. And depending on how I leave the balls, my opponent might have an easy out. If I try to get the 8 between the 3 and 4, my opponent still might have an easy out. Another option is to send the 8 in front of a pocket, so if your opponent drops the 11, you get a chance for a kick at the 8 for the win. If my opponent were smarter, he would instead try to freeze the 3 against the 11 for an easy win, assuming I left the 11 there on my next shot. Another option is to just send the 8 to a tougher position, making a run out of the solids more difficult. A good place to leave the 8 is in the middle of the top rail, and the best way to do this is to bank the 8 off the side rail. That shot has a large margin for error to leave the 8 close to the center of the head rail. But then my opponent could just pocket the 11 and herd the 3 in, and then play a good safety. I would be in a world of hurt here. A final, low percentage option for stripes is to jump onto the top of the 11 in an attempt to pocket the ball and get a look at the 8. If that had rolled off the rail back onto the table, I might have had a look at the 8, but that's asking for a lot. Again, if you are stripes, there aren't really any great options. The best you could hope for is convincing your opponent to agree to a stalemate and re-break a new game, but no smart player would accept such a proposition. Other than that, the best possible scenario for stripes, assuming your opponent doesn't see any good options, is to move the solids and hope to get a look at the 11 at some point. Here, my opponent is not being very smart and tries to hide the 11 again. That gives me a rail-first running side spin look at the 11. I failed in the first attempt, but this shot is not that difficult. If I had made it the first time, I would have won the game. Shooting solids, there are many good options to win the game. I could just pocket the 11 and leave the cue ball safe. I didn't play that well, and I left my opponent with an opportunity to leave me safe. Luckily, I can kick as well as my opponent, and I am likely to get a look at one of my balls at some point. If I play the first shot smarter, I can really put my opponent in a tough spot, forcing him to go off 2 rails to get a hit on the 8. If the 3 were frozen to the 11 instead, a really good option would be to use backspin to drive the 3 through the 11. This results in an easy out. With a gap between the balls, it is really tough to do this. And you might sell out the game if your opponent is a decent banker. But with just the right amount of speed and spin, you can drive the 3 through the 11 even with the gap. And that would give me an easy win. Another option is to try to freeze the 3 to the 11 first. If your opponent isn't very savvy, he might leave it there, allowing you to get the easy win like we just saw. Another good option is to herd the 3 after the 11 with follow. Here, I could play safe by sending the cue ball up table, but that would give my opponent a chance to win the game with a bank. A better option is to use running spin to get more behind the 4 for a two-way shot. If I end up nearly straight, I have an easy out. If not, I can play a lock-up safety. If you don't lock it up, you might leave your opponent an easy kick, but I still have the upper hand since I could jump or kick for the win. Here, I decided to use the plus system to kick off 2 rails, but it didn't work out. I guess you can't win them all. A final option is to pocket the 11 and leave a tough shot on the 8. However, this gives my opponent the chance to get lucky and win with a low percentage bank. My opponent got lucky to make the bank, but luckily for me, he scratched.
Well, I got lucky.
Here's another example where giving your opponent a look like this can be dangerous, especially if your opponent is good with spin transfer banks. A better option might be to leave the cue ball across the table where the cross-side bank is blocked by a double kiss. Again, there are many good options shooting solids, but the best is probably herding the 3 through the 11 with follow as a two-way shot. If you end up straight on the 4, you can get the easy win. And if you don't, you can play a lock-up safety. I really like my chances from here. I hope you enjoyed this in-depth look at an interesting situation. I want to thank everybody on the AZ Billiards online forum who suggested most of the options demonstrated. Thanks, guys. For more information and demonstrations related to any shot type or system used in this video, see the links in the video description. Good luck with your game from Dr. Dave.